welcome on in to another edition of the Between the Hash Marks podcast. I'm Matt Lombardo, and as always, I'm joined by my friend, my colleague, my mentor, and the purveyor of the Two Deep Zone on Substack, Mike Tanier. Mike, what's going on, my brother?
I'm doing great. And I just want to tell you, every time you throw to me at the beginning of the podcast, I am completely unprepared. I realize this. I'm a media professional. And yet every throw, it's like, wait, he's throwing to me. What do I say? Hey, week 9, big game last night. Steelers win. Now I'm ready to tell you, I'm prepared to be unprepared. Happy to be here. Happy to be podcasting.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, a little bit of housekeeping for you. If you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store, Spotify. Throw us a like on my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975 and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts because they really help grow the show. They push us up in the algorithm. It makes us easier to go and get guests where we can say, wow, look at how many people love this podcast. We have a couple of reviews for you that we will read at the end of the show today. Of course, subscribe on Substack to Mike Tanier's Two Deep Zone. Trust me, folks, you do not want to miss the analysis throughout the week, every week from Mike Tanier. He goes in depth on the stats. He goes heavy with the jokes. You don't want to miss it. It's one of a kind. And of course, you can check me out on Substack as well at Between the Hash Marks. And Mike, we're coming to you just 2 days removed from the greatest play that the Washington Commanders have had this century, the play of the century for the franchise, a moment that validates their chances in the NFC East and Jayden Daniels as an MVP candidate.
Wait a minute. We have to back up about 30 steps here. Okay, first of all, play of the century. We're talking about the 21st century, not the last 100 years.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have to pull Super Bowl 17 footage. Okay, that's fine. So now we're talking about validating this team as the NFC East winner. We're talking about this kid as an MVP candidate. He threw a YOLO ball in the air that got bounced to his guy, and suddenly we're doing this. I need to pump the brakes on all of this. Now, I'm going to say it. I loved the Hail Noah. I think it was a fun play, exciting highlight. I gasped. I get it. And I love what Jayden Daniels is doing right now. But I'm going to tell you right now, I have to do this. The streets need me. Commanders are frauds.
Disagree. Totally disagree. But go on.
Commander's absolute fraud. So I'm doing my mailbag for the Two Deep Zone, and somebody, one of the longtime reader, probably listening right now, sent the question: how is this team 6-2 good? Now, how can you ask the question, how is this team 6-2 when you watch them go from 5-3 to 6-2 36 hours ago in the most famous play of the last 6 months with a bouncing ball win? That is why they are 6-2, not 5-3. But you're like, okay, they're a 5-3 team. All right. They beat the Giants because Brian Dable looked at his injured kicker on a Friday night and said, I don't need to pull the rookie off the practice squad. I don't have to do that. I'll just go without a kicker this week. That'll be fine. That's the kind of genius move we do here in the New York Giants. Giants lose a game to the Commanders where the Commanders do nothing but go down the field and kick field goals. That is why the Commanders are not 4-4 right now. If that's not enough for you, let's listen to their big victories this season besides the Bears, the Panthers, the pre-liberation Browns, the Giants, and the Bengals. That's the big team. That's the big win. Oh, and the Cardinals. Those are the big wins. A couple of 500 teams there. They have played nobody. They have gotten 2 fluky wins. I think they're heading the right direction. They're just another rebuilding team. Okay, that's it.
Sure. Go back to that Arizona win on the road, comeback fashion, and Jayden Daniels passes for 233 yards, touchdown and interception. He's improved every week. Take the week and put it on a shelf against the Panthers where he was injured early, knocked from the game, and they still beat the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, as they have come to be known. But you look at the Baltimore win, loss against Baltimore, rather, 269, 2 touchdowns. Again, it was a loss to the Ravens, 110 quarterback rating. You look at the game Sunday, comeback win on the drive, bouncy play, fluky play, all that. He still needed to throw the pass. He still finished with 326 yards, a touchdown, and a 92.7 passer rating, while they're wrapping his ribs between each series on the bench, clearly not fully healthy. But they're a team, in my opinion, Mike, that unlike the Dallas Cowboys, certainly unlike the New York Giants, and who knows, I'm still teetering on what exactly the Philadelphia Eagles are at this point. The Commanders are getting better every week. Their rookie quarterback is getting better every week, and they are buying in to what their head coach is instilling as a culture, and it's taking root pretty quickly.
I'm not going to argue whether Daniels is improving or playing well or the rookie of the year. I'm not going to argue any of those points. But how can you say, gosh, I'm still teetering on what the Eagles are, a team with a pedigree, a team with well-known superstars, a team that won 11 games before their big collapse last year.
There's a big asterisk. That's a pretty big asterisk.
Yes, but they have a track record of doing these things, and now they're doing these things. I'm still on the fence about that team. This team that beat the Panthers, I am all in. This team that won on a Hail Mary, I am all in. It's one or the other. If you're questionable about the Eagles, you have to be even more questionable and more skeptical against this Commanders team that has these weird wins against second-tier opponents and big wins against fifth-tier opponents on their schedule, has not beaten anybody good. The Eagles have beaten the Packers. That is a very good team, okay? Yeah. There are no quality wins. Your quality win that you're pointing to is the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, it was an impressive comeback. You have to come back against the Arizona Cardinals. If this is the feather in your cap, you are saying we're a spunky rebuilding team. We are not going to hold on to first place in the NFC East. We are not going to be anything more than like the 7th seed in the wild card, and we are full of helium right now.
I'll project it even forward, and I'll keep taking on more hopium over here for the Commanders. The 22nd ranked remaining strength of schedule. Yes, they beat the Giants once. They still get the Cowboys twice, and that feels like a benefit rather than a detractor at this stage. They still get the carcass of the New Orleans Saints. They still get the Giants another time. They still get the Tennessee Titans. And when I look at that schedule, why can't they sweep those games or at bare minimum split with the Cowboys? Now, I know they still have the Eagles twice, and I think that game against Philadelphia is going to define in a lot of ways, that first one, how this race shapes up in the NFC East the rest of the season. But when I look at that schedule and I look at the fact that they've already banked away 6 wins, including the conference wins over the Giants, over Arizona, and now over the Bears and Carolina. When it comes down to tiebreaker season, those wins are going to matter. And the fact that they have such a navigable road the rest of the way, it's not just what I've seen. It's not just the momentum that it feels like right now. It's the opportunity in front of Daniels and the Commanders to get better against competition they should be able to take care of business against that has me optimistic about their trajectory.
I am optimistic about their long-term trajectory. Like I said, if you're going to talk to me about, 6th seed because of the schedule and all these other things, we're not talking about the same thing anymore. We're not talking about this meteoric rise team. We're like, oh, this was the fun little fluke. That is what we're talking about. Let's see what happens against the Eagles. Let's see where the Cowboys are when Micah returns. Let's see if there's a little bit of a different Cowboys team you see down the road there. There are some other tough tests on there. You got the Steelers. You got the Falcons. Sounds like, you kind of put them off to the side, which is kind of tacitly saying, well, they could lose to the Falcons and the Steelers. If you think this team can lose to the Falcons and the Steelers, then they are not the team they claim to be.
I think they split those.
Okay.
I think you can split those 2 games.
Okay.
And I think that there's a very real chance that they win 11. And if you get to 11 wins and one of them happens to be against the Eagles, then all of a sudden the implausible, unrealistic surprise division championship run is back on the table a little bit.
Okay, I consider what you called their absolute ceiling. That's their absolute ceiling. So I'm going to come in. They're going to finish. And again, they have all these banked victories right now. So they're going to come in with 10. They're going to get these Titans wins and stuff like that. They're going to be a wild card because either the Eagles are going to pull themselves together or the Cowboys are going to do something unanticipated. That's a low percentage, but it's still on the table. And they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. And hopefully we come out of this talking about a healthy and ready for year 2 Jayden Daniels. Because again, he played that game, like you said, hurt. He took a hit or two that he probably shouldn't have taken. Let's hope that they're not playing this game with his health that could jeopardize him in the future, because we have all seen that in Washington before.
Right. The last thing that you need is for them to turn this kid into RG3. And I thought you put it pretty brilliantly in the column on Monday morning, where you talked about the fact that they weren't going to rush this kid back. They weren't going to do this. They weren't going to do that. But all of a sudden, a matchup against Caleb Williams became the determining factor of their success or failure as a franchise this season.
Right.
And there you go. And of course, CBS, the camera crew caught them, putting the wrapper around him in between series every time on the bench. And it did make you wonder, because I think that one of the reasons I'm so optimistic and bullish about them in 2024 and beyond is because I'm all in on Adam Peters. I'm all in on the influence of Lance Newmark coming from Detroit. I think that Dan Quinn, what he did in Dallas, was more than the rehabilitation and retribution that he needed from coughing up 28-3 in the Super Bowl.
Right.
And they've bought in on him.
Mm-hmm.
But you start to see these things like trotting him out there when maybe he was 94% rather than 100%. And it does make you worry a little bit about how responsible are they being with this kid in his future.
Right. I worry about that. I worry about the same thing in New England where they send Drake May out there behind no offensive line with no receivers. Let the kid take hits because you got to get that win over the Jets, like in your coach's rookie year. I don't like decisions like that. He seems like he's fine. He gave us the play of the year. He's developing well. I just, in the back of my mind, I say, what are the Commanders really playing for? Let's be realistic about what their goals are and what their expectations should be.
Can we establish some common ground at least that with 1,736 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions, that the common ground between Tanier and Lombardo is that Jayden Daniels is now the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year? Can we establish that and check that box?
I was going to just get a very up-to-date, up-to-the-minute on what his odds are, but I regret to inform you that my thing is not working. I agree 100%. I can get the odds in 1 second because I don't think we're exactly making a hot take.
Right. Especially after what happened on Sunday, especially watching him win that game. And let's be honest about it, it was comeback fashion. He needed a comeback game-winning drive, and he delivered. As fluky as the play was, and even though there was a Bears defender jawing with the crowd as the ball was snapped, Daniels still made the throw.
And he outperformed Caleb Williams. The money line is -400, so I'm going to tell you I am not currently voting for Jayden Daniels for Rookie of the Year, but not because I don't think he deserves it.
There you go. So you brought up the Eagles. You touched on the Eagles and their start, and let's stay right here in the NFC East where they go into Cincinnati and pick up their first win in forever over the Bengals on the road and really get back to, in my opinion, the kind of football that they played when they went to the Super Bowl in 2022, when they jumped out to that 10-1 start a year ago with Jalen Hurts as the catalyst, playing MVP caliber football, 3 rushing touchdowns, including 2 tush pushes for Jalen Hurts. The defense takes care of business, timely turnovers, timely pass breakups. It was sluggish start again against Joe Burrow, but have the Eagles turn the corner?
I think they are turning the corner right now. Sluggish start, by the way, and another 3rd and long. It seems like the conversion rate against the Eagles defense on 3rd and long is like 84%. I know it's not, but it feels that way sometimes. So there's all this work to be done, but everything you said is true. And that's what I was referring to earlier. When you look at this and say, what's your proof of concept that this Eagles team is for real? And the answer is they look like the 2022 team with the same guys. And they look like the September through Thanksgiving team of 2023 with most of the same guys, but with upgrades in place that make you think, okay, these are legitimate upgrades that are preventing some of the things we saw last December and January and a little bit in September. So I'm bullish about this. We got Jacksonville coming up. I think we're going to be seeing the end of another Doug Peterson regime in Philly. and it's a rather doable schedule after that. So I'm excited about the Eagles. Yeah, I worry about their flaws, etc. I think they're playing outstanding football right now.
There aren't that many tests that remain on the schedule. You start to think about the 2 against the Commanders. You talk about going on the road against a suddenly very plucky Los Angeles Rams team coming off a nice win over Sam Darnold and the Vikings at home. You got the Cowboys twice. You have the Steelers. So there aren't that many games where you're going to be truly tested, and it's going to come down to, do the Eagles play down to their competition against teams like the Jaguars, against teams like the Giants, against teams like the Rams? Or is this a team that found its rhythm, will flick the switch and commit to doubling down on running the football and setting up opportunities for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and all those things? The concern I have for the Eagles is Nick Sirianni going to be as consistent as he was in the Super Bowl year in terms of game plan, philosophy, all the intangibles? And also suddenly the health along the offensive line. They're without Jordan Mailata. Lane Johnson is finally banged up. And so much of their success along that during this run here has been because they have the most dominant line in football. I just need to see how they're able to hold up against some pretty decent pass rushes in the next few weeks.
Right. And the solution to that over the last couple of weeks has been running the ball and running it the way they ran it in 2021, 2022, when it was kind of Sirianni and Steichen's offense. And you see it. It's very different from what we saw early in the year when the first couple of drives, they're dropping back and trying to run a dozen different things in the passing game. Now it's, inside zone Saquon again on 2nd and 9, even though it might have been 1 yard gain on 1st and 10. And that works. Even with Mailata out, Fred Johnson has been okay as a run blocker, and that's been working. And of course, it sets up things behind it. That is a source of optimism. You got to look at the other side of the ball. One of the reasons the defense was playing so poorly, particularly in the 4th quarter against the Falcons, for much of the game against the Buccaneers when they were at full strength and the Eagles were not, is there's two rookies on the back end.
Yeah.
Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are playing better. We talk about like Daniels getting better every week. You have a starting cornerback and a starting nickel getting better every week. That's another reason to look at this and say, hey, if we're going to be erasing games in terms of this game isn't, indicative of what this team is, you erase the Buccaneers game.
Yeah.
Because right. You didn't have your receivers and you didn't have Lane Johnson, and like this kid was a rookie and he was covering Mike Evans. You say that's the one you minimize. You don't turn around and say, gosh, it's kind of fluky that you beat the Bengals or that you beat the Giants, et cetera.
No, and I think the biggest reason for optimism isn't just that Quinyon Mitchell is suddenly playing like a starting caliber NFL corner over the last 2 weeks. And I was really impressed with what he did on Sunday. But it's Jalen Hurts returning to form, because everything about what they do, A.J. Brown is the most important player on the roster, and you see how it takes one play and he'll change the trajectory of an entire game. Saquon Barkley is vital to what they do, but their success or failure in a lot of ways hinges on Jalen Hurts. It's now 3 weeks without a turnover. And, you look at what he did 2 of the last 3 weeks, over 230 passing yards, without Dallas Goedert the last 2 weeks, with getting A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith both back up to speed coming off of injuries. If this is the Jalen Hurts they get the rest of the way, if he's suddenly gotten more comfortable in Kellen Moore's offense 6-7 games into the season, and you're now building rather than coming out of the foundation, then I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. Again, it just comes down to when they're against an equal, right? Like, I think the Commanders in the division are the closest thing to an equal as they're going to find. What do you do? Which Eagles team do you get? Do you get the team from the first 10 weeks a year ago, or do you get the team against Seattle on the road last year that was the first real sign of trouble that things were going in the wrong direction?
And that was like, that team had the lead in the third quarter.
Yes.
Two-score lead in the third quarter. You get the fourth quarter team. I think Hurts is more comfortable. I don't think it's Kellen Moore's offense.
True.
I think that's Kellen Moore's offense. You are watching them. You're seeing them plug the ball off tackle. You're seeing zone reads. You're seeing quarterback draws. You're seeing the bomb up the sidelines. You're seeing the big comebacks, those big comebacks that we always saw from Smitty, from A.J. Brown. You're getting all of that. You're not getting many attempts over the middle of the field. You're not getting the ball in the slot. That's the old Sirianni Steichen offense. There's not a ton of motion. Kellen Moore's big thing is motion. There's little bits of motion. I think there might have been a power struggle.
Could have been.
And I think Kellen Moore didn't win it.
Could very well have been. Yeah, and especially with some of the concepts that you're starting to see. Let's turn our attention now to the other side of the state in Pittsburgh, where Russell Wilson is starting to check some boxes. The Steelers' offense looks like it might actually be a little bit multifaceted, and there is a little bit of an element of the vertical passing game, but none of that really matters, because the way that the Steelers win is they just play swarming, opportunistic defense. And TJ Watt, let's call a declaration right here on October 29th that the Defensive Player of the Year award is no longer the Defensive Player of the Year award. It is the TJ Watt Trophy.
Let's call it the Watt Trophy.
Yes, even
the
better.
Watt Trophy. And you can have a picture of him and his brother, with holding up a flag or whatever JJ does these days. I think he just walks around Houston with a flag. Anyway, I like it. By the way, TJ Watt plus 100 for Defensive Player of the Year. This is your last chance to just get him. I don't know who else could even win the award this year, with Micah obviously being out for a while. I don't think Myles Garrett's been playing on 2 bad feet. I don't think he's really in the running. So who else is really a serious candidate at this point?
Yeah, and there isn't that Deron Bland breakout with 10 interceptions or whatever it was a year ago. There aren't any real defensive backs that are throwing their weight around and being legitimate difference makers. It does feel like
McKinney would be the one, but like he's plus 1,000 right now.
And it seems like he might have faded a little bit after. I mean, again, you're not going to sustain 5 interceptions through 5 weeks. It's just not
right.
You're not intercepting 17 passes, right? But if the Steelers do what it seems like they now, especially after watching Baltimore lose to the Browns on Sunday, if the Steelers go on to win that division and they're one of the top 2 seeds in the AFC, and it's because of TJ Watt, how do you look anywhere else? How do you look at, Aiden Hutchinson is hurt. He's banged up. For as great as Brian Branch is on the back end of that secondary in Detroit, nobody's really, jumping out there. Nobody in San Francisco is having as consistently dominant a season as TJ Watt is. So yeah, if you can get TJ Watt at plus 100, you're printing money at that point.
Right. And I think you take it at this point. Absolutely. Who's the most important non-quarterback in the NFL? Your choices are Watt, Justin Jefferson, or other.
Yeah, I think it has to. I mean, at this point, I can make an argument for Micah Parsons only because you saw how much that defense collapsed.
In absentia,
That you take him out and everything else falls apart.
Right.
But in terms of guys who are healthy right now, it's got to come down to TJ Watt and maybe here's a bust out name for you, maybe a Will Anderson and what he's doing in Houston, because it seems like he might not have the numbers that TJ Watt has, but he's as big a focal point of what the Texans are doing on defense and vital to what Houston's doing, surviving in, I'm going to call it what it is, a sophomore slump from Bryce Young.
Yeah. Talking about CJ Stroud.
CJ Stroud, yes.
Absolutely. By the way, he is, Will Anderson is second in the odds at plus 450, is having a strong season. Him and Hunter are kind of keeping that team, letting them be a defense and like clock management type of team during that slump. I like that. But if we're going to make arguments for in absentia for Micah Parsons, here come the 49ers fans into the chat. Well, the most important player is Christian McCaffrey because we can't do anything without him. So I'll say it's what I have to do that voice. I'm sorry with the 49ers. I'm sorry.
I kind of want to just, charter a flight for you, a helicopter to pick you up from your house, fly you to an airport, and drop you into Fisherman's Wharf. And we can do this show with you in Fisherman's Wharf with all of your 49ers vitriol on display for the fan base.
One running back got hurt. We can't be expected to win for the rest of the year. We have to make this our only excuse for anything.
I do think it's kind of hilarious that we both kind of put out what a garbage dumpster fire that Sunday night game was, and all of a sudden San Francisco pulled away in the second half.
Right? Oh God, yeah, because in that first half it was such a look at these two last year's news, 2 years ago news team, et cetera, et cetera. Neither of these teams is showing out, and then the Niners go and they show out for for the third quarter. In fairness, then the Cowboys went out and showed out for the fourth quarter, but that's pathetic.
Yes. And you want to talk about, I won't go as far as saying pathetic, but I was watching that game on Monday night and I had a little bit of a revelation watching that game. You're going to think this is nothing new or special, but I just don't think that Daniel Jones is the guy. And that was the game that proved it for me. And again, the numbers were fine. 264 yards and an interception. You're not going to win with that. You're not going to lose with that. He had the touchdown taken off the board by penalty flags. But something that Troy Aikman said really jumped out. There were 3 or 4 throws where if he would have led the receiver half a yard, all of a sudden the 12-yard diving catch becomes a 55-yard touchdown. If he would have put some touch on the ball, an incompletion where the ball bounced off his hands becomes an 8 or 10-yard gain. And it's little things like that. It's little intricacies and dynamics of certain throws throughout games that just could change the outcome, change how well the offense operates. And the Giants, they decided, and I'm dumbfounded by this, that they decided to let Saquon Barkley walk out the door, which is fine in a vacuum. He's a running back. You shouldn't pay him when you're at that stage of your development as a team. Decided to try and draft some offensive linemen. You drafted Malik Neighbors, and yet Daniel Jones this year, no better or worse than what he's been at any point in his career. It just seems like they've gone as far as they can go, and why play him the rest of the way?
That's the game that did it for you.
It did.
It's you're John Mara. That was the one. Ladies and gentlemen, it's still possible to change minds on October 29th. It is still possible. But yeah, I know what you're saying in that when you look at that level of play, when Aikman is pointing out these things a veteran quarterback should be making a touch pass there, not a fastball. A veteran quarterback should be leading that ball yard out there. That's what Daniel Jones is. He's a veteran quarterback. He has been a rookie since 2018. You're still doing these things. Well, he's got to learn to do this. It has been 6 years. It is time to stop having that conversation about the guy. And, you're not having it. Of course, I'm not having it. It's the Giants internally that are still having this conversation about this guy and running out there. And like you said, still we're doing this in the offseason. So you get results in a game like that last night where it's a close game. Solid quarterbacking might have made the difference. Okay. Jones admitted on one of the TJ Watt strip sacks that he was supposed to make a line call adjustment to Watt would have double team.
Right.
He's a 6-year vet. That's what you're supposed to do. That's TJ Watt over there. When are you supposed to learn this? When you're 44? I don't get it. So yeah, I'm glad you've come around. I'm glad you've come around to the dark side on Daniel Jones because,
Look, I wasn't waving pom-poms. I was not saying that Daniel Jones is going to win them a Super Bowl. I was skeptical of the plan. I understood why they would recommit to Daniel Jones because you don't want to wind up in quarterback purgatory,
yes.
especially after letting Saquon Barkley go. You have to do something. But you start to kind of think about this a little bit. They were picking 6th this year, right? I don't get the impression that the New England Patriots were all that jazzed up to take Drake May, right? Like they took Drake May because he was the number 3 quarterback on the board. They needed a quarterback. Their roster is so far away. They're probably going to be in a position to take a quarterback in 2025 if they needed to anyway.
Right.
My criticism of the Giants right now moving forward is if you weren't convinced that Daniel Jones going into the year of our Lord 2024 could be a franchise quarterback capable of elevating the rest of the roster, then why did you not put together a package of, I don't care how many draft picks, to move up from number 6 to number 3 to go get Drake May, or to move up from number 6 to number 4 to go take Bo Nix, who, by the way, is getting better every week. Why did you not foresee this problem and decide this cockamamie plan that, oh, if we go and we finally draft an offensive lineman after spending a decade and a half of trying to build an offensive line, and we go and get him a number 1 wide receiver after letting Odell Beckham Jr., previous regime, walk out the door. If you were going to piecemeal a roster around a quarterback that you were not all in on because you didn't even pick up his 5th-year option,
right,
why did you not throw all the chips into the table to go and get a quarterback this year to speed up the rebuild? That's my criticism of the Giants, because you punted the year down the road, and yeah, you got Malik Neighbors, but what are you doing at quarterback?
I think the Giants lack object permanence. They're like a canary or like a goldfish, and they see its reflection. No decision is made longitudinally for what was happening 2 years ago or happened two years from now. Something goes in front of them, they make a knee-jerk reaction, and that's how they move on. That's how they have handled this every step along the way. They extended Daniel Jones after the year when they went, 8-7-1 and got into the playoffs and won a fluky playoff game. That was, and they did it in a way that said, well, there's an out in this contract. There is an out in this contract. They can be out of this contract at the end of this season, but I have no idea. I have no idea what their offseason logic was. I really don't, because the moment he was coming off an injury. Remember, he was coming off an injury. So all the things you describe about him, is like, you can draft JJ McCarthy or Penix, or you can make a package deal or something like that. They recommitted because they just forgot their own backstory.
Right. And here's the thing. It's not just a pass is prologue situation here. It's moving forward.
Yes.
That he has a $23 million injury guarantee that triggers if he can't pass a physical this offseason.
Right.
After what happened last night, after everything you've seen throughout the course of this year, this is not a playoff team. It's just not. Right. And if I can see that you've reached your ceiling with Daniel Jones, they have to have at least questions about that if you're Brian Dable or Joe Schoen, and particularly John Mara, who I hope he's sleeping at night given Saquon Barkley and what he's doing in Philadelphia. But how do you not bench Daniel Jones for the rest of the year? There's a report out today that they're going to continue playing him. It's the status quo. But if you risk triggering $23 million against next year's cap if he gets hurt significantly, why not rip the Band-Aid off? Why not play Drew Lock? And why not look ahead towards getting into that top 3 or 4 in the draft to take a quarterback next spring?
First of all, I hope John Mara doesn't sleep at night. I hope he's visited by Marley's ghost, etc. Secondly, I don't care about his money. Of course, I care about the Giants salary cap, but spend $23 million on a guy. Go nuts. Go do whatever you want, John Mara. And the only answer to that is, have you seen Drew Lock?
I have. Have you watched the Giants? Have you seen anything that you think is Daniel Jones or Drew Lock are going to lead them to the postseason?
No, but Daniel Jones is better than Drew Lock. That's something I feel comfortable with. And I don't want to have to sit down, even if it's Tuesday morning and I'm doing my reviews and I didn't watch the Giants. I don't want to have to watch Drew Lock film. I don't want to watch Tommy Cutlass film either. I don't want to watch Daniel Jones film, but I'm used to it. And that may be the logic behind the decision that has kept him in the league all these years.
And a lot of decisions that have been made with a couple of franchises, one that claimed to go all in this offseason, simply decided not to. And the other one that's decided to just throw everything against the wall over the past 10 to 12 days, firing their head coach, making a couple blockbuster trades, committing to a 107-year-old declining anti-vax quarterback. What is the biggest disaster? What's the bigger poop show in this league right now, Mike? Is it the Jets? Is it the Cowboys? Is it someone in the field? What's the biggest mess right now?
See, the dark horse candidate out in the corner I'm going to mention is the Tennessee Titans, who brought in a bunch of veterans. They brought in Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Jamal Adams, etc., Tony Pollard, and said, Will Levis is our guy. Levis threw up all over himself for 4 weeks, suffered an injury that sounds like it's also a little bit of a, hey, get 100%, get 200% better, Will, take your time, and are now fire sailing everybody. So they are like this comically inept team, and they went out there and they let Lions score 50 points on them.
I'd argue that the Titans have been that way for the better part of 18 months to 24 months, because they seem rudderless. They seem endless. I'll go back to the AJ Brown trade. I'm not sure what the justification was there, but they seem to vacillate between trying to be all in by going and getting DeAndre Hopkins, making the trade for L'Jarius Sneed this offseason, and committing to Will Levis. Right. And you know, going and getting Tony Pollard when you already had the Tajay Spears. There's no real consistency in terms of modus operandi in a division that, let's be honest here, all of those teams outside of Houston have real warts. You could make a run at a wild card in the AFC, but they just don't seem to have a plan. They certainly don't have the pieces, but I can't label them a poop show because
no one watches them.
Women in poop for 18 months.
Right. And no one watches them. So, you know, it's not a show. It's just poop. Whereas, and I love making fun of the Cowboys, but the Jets, I watch these games and it's like, and I've said this in a couple of podcasts, it's the first 3 and out. Like it's the first series and it ends on like 3rd and 7 and Rodgers kind of overthrows a guy and he's shaking his head and his shoulders are slumped. And it's, dude, there is 13 minutes and 27 seconds left in the first quarter, and you are already acting like you hate being here. You are projecting that to the sky, and it's no wonder that like every team is like taking their shot at you right now and beating you. They are an absolute and total poop show.
Actually, I just got this text message alert that, oh, there it is. The Jets have designed a new logo beginning this week.
Really? That should change things.
I got the text.
It is Aaron Rodgers' face.
There it is. It's Aaron Rodgers.
He's
right there.
It's not. He's smiling.
Oh, very true.
It's a deep fake because he's smiling. Aaron Rodgers' face when he smiles looks like that horror movie.
Here's the problem. They are running out of scapegoats for Aaron Rodgers. They're running out of people to throw into the Hudson River. They got rid of Robert Saleh thinking that would fix things. Are they going to fire him again? Like, should they have him like bring his box of stuff back to Florham Park and then like fire him again? Because everything that was going wrong with the Jets was exasperated in Foxborough on Sunday. They trade for Davante Adams. What are they going to do next? Are they going to offer 27 first-round picks for Justin Jefferson? Like, you have a decent receiving core now with Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard and Davante. You have 2 really good running backs. You go up and get your ass kicked against the Patriots with Drake May knocked from the game before halftime with Jacoby Brissett in at quarterback. Crash dummy Brissett, crash test Brissett, as you have come to label him. I don't know how they right the ship up there in New York. And I wrote the column in the aftermath of Robert Saleh's firing that general manager Joe Douglas is now a dead man walking. Mm-hmm. You might as well have him clean out his box of stuff too, because it's not going to get better from here.
Right. He might as well clean out his box of stuff. I'm surprised Greg Zuerlein still has a job, but like, it's a kicker. I guess even Aaron Rodgers can't just fire a kicker. The announcers were saying during the game, the Jets can't beat man coverage. They don't have a solution for man-on-man coverage. Now, that brings, and I looked at some statistics, I looked at some film, sounded like an accurate thing. My first question is, how can you not beat man coverage when you have Garrett Wilson, now Davante Adams, you had Mike Williams going wide, you've got backs who out of the backfield should be able to beat linebackers. How can you not do that? These guys should be winning, even if you say some of them are a little over the hill. The second thing is, why is the offense designed in such a way? There's a million ways to beat man coverage. You can sit there, you have crossing routes, and you can have guys going in motion, all these other things that you can do, because it's man coverage, it's playground football. You should be able to scheme things up so somebody's mismatched. it's not because Aaron Rodgers runs the offense. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't like these play designs, Aaron Rodgers doesn't run them. So you have this offense where like the system is kind of like, go out there and win. Go out there and beat your cornerback like we would do in the playground when we were 13. Go beat the other guy and I'll get the ball to you. That's not an NFL offense.
No, it's not. And they've already demoted Nathaniel Hackett, right? They promoted the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They took play calling away, so Aaron Rodgers could call the plays. They reshuffled the deck chairs on the Titanic before throwing them overboard too.
Right. Exactly. So they made it more Rodgers friendly instead of more good.
Right. And should we be surprised that the defense is starting to leak oil? I mean, we're going on now 24 games where they have had to carry that team. And look, think back to last year. They were reasonably competitive down the stretch. And they were talking about, are they going to bring Aaron Rodgers back? Can he come back and lead them to a postseason run because of the defense? Yeah. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised that for the better part of a full season and a half at this point, that you've asked them to carry the weight of the franchise, that now they're buckling. And now they're losing to teams like the New England Patriots. You have no business even being, with the roster they have, you have no business being anything less than a touchdown favorite. It all seems to be coming off the rails really quickly for the Jets. They've lost 5 straight. I just don't know. We talk about them trying to go all in during the year. We talk about them playing the long game for this season. They're running out of season.
And they got Hassan Reddick back. And to quote a very famous old coach, all I did was run past the quarterback over again. You're just running past the quarterback over and over again. So I don't think that's going to help very much either.
Do you buy that Bill Belichick is this great voice that fans should be, buying into his opinions? And again, respect the rings, respect the Hall of Fame legacy. I don't know that I buy into Bill Belichick's analysis more so than any other former coach or any other former player that you trot up there on a podium during Monday Night Football.
I was hoping to get from Bill Belichick something like, well, on the communication from the head coach to the coordinator on a 4th down call like that, the head coach makes sure of this, this, and this. The coordinator has installed a play on Tuesday and communicates. I was expecting this unbelievably deep knowledge, inside baseball coming in from this is how it's actually done. This is how Bill Parcells did it, how I did it, et cetera, how Tom Brady did it, et cetera. I'm getting weak tea. From Bill Belichick. He is just sitting there like a grumpy old drunk at the bar, babbling his thoughts off the top of his head. And the problem, the first thing that's disappointing is, again, it says like, these sound like the observations you and I make, only they're not as well thought out most of the time. And secondly, everything then ricochets right back to the individual, because Reddick had to comment on the comment. Everything Belichick says is this kind of gospel proclamation that we all have to react to afterwards. And it's shoot from the hip, I guess. On the one hand, that's great. But on the other hand, it's not thought out. It's not detailed. It's not insight. It's snippy little sound bites that Shannon Sharp could have delivered or Skip Bayless could have delivered. But now, because it comes from the Pope of all things, we have to act like we heard some great nugget of wisdom and change our lives over it.
And it's not like we're expecting so much here. You go watch Nick Saban on College Game Day on Saturday mornings, and he's terrific. He's giving you that kind of insight in terms of what happens throughout the course of a game, in terms of his gut feel on a certain team or a certain player, and elaborating on his analysis. You just don't get that from Bill, because I don't think it's in Bill's personality. I think that the Bill Belichick that you got at the podium on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in New England for all those years is kind of who he is.
It's weird, because then he shouldn't have taken this job. But I guess like in some part of his brain must be like, okay, I worked my ass off for whatever, 50 years in the sport, worked my way to the absolute pinnacle. Now I'm going to date a younger woman and I'm going to phone it in.
Right. Cash is check.
I actually respect that to a degree. Phone it in a different way. Don't phone it in a way where you're like causing these little getting these little like rap battles across the NFL. Just go hang around on your yacht. Go write your memoirs. Go phone it in some other simple way that doesn't make everything sound like you're in this little combative, angry grandpa state of mind.
The blender full of angry people, so to speak. Let's spin it forward a little bit. What's your circle of game for this weekend?
I circled the Ravens against the Broncos because both teams are 5-3. How is this possible that both of these teams are 5-3?
Yeah, especially when you look at the Ravens. How did Kyle Hamilton drop that interception?
Yeah.
I mean, that was egregious. He threw it right to him, in the hands, off the hands.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But
the Ravens remain one of the 2 or 3 most complete teams in the league. I
right.
look at why are the Broncos 5-3? Bo Nix is getting better, and they seem to be trusting Bo Nix a little bit more. And I did not see that Broncos defense coming, by the way.
No. No one saw that Broncos defense coming at that level. You know, if you start naming guys, you're like, yeah, it's Patrick Surtain and Zach Allen and Cody Barton. So like now I'm starting to get the names a little more correct. But like entering the season, it's like, okay, they got one good guy. That's fine. That defense is really good. And yeah, you're seeing the slow development of Bo Nix. And this is kind of like, you know, when Sean Payton comes in and says, I've got a plan. And the plan is he's going to throw nothing but screen passes and hand off for a couple weeks, but I want to get him comfortable out there, et cetera. You can kind of trust that, no, there really is a plan. This isn't just some BS that Sean Payton came up with. I think they're overvalued at 5-3, but again, defense is strong. Things are coming around, kind of like the Commanders. Things are moving according to a logical plan that you can follow. I think the Ravens take this game, but I think they're in real trouble if they don't.
No, I agree with you. And I think that as far as Sean Payton goes, what you're seeing this year and the optimism around what he's doing with Bo Nix and his development and the strategy in terms of building the confidence before throwing open the playbook, that's kind of what we expected to get out of Sean Payton and why people were optimistic about Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, because you have this quarterback whisperer who knows how to maximize the position. Nobody factored in that he hated Russell Wilson's guts, that Russell Wilson was a hate the face guy.
Right,
you know,
right.
but he has his young quarterback. He's getting better. I don't know that they win this week, but if they can keep it competitive, I think that's a nice step in terms of their metamorphosis as a team and as a potential contender.
Absolutely. Now, what do you got as your circle game?
I have a big game. I'm surprised this was on the table for me. I got Lions and Packers. Even if Jordan Love can't go, Matt LaFleur gets to dip into his magical bag of innovative explosiveness that you talked about in the column on Monday, that we talked about on the 2 deep zone. Or we get to see whether the Lions can continue to find new ways to just out and out pulverize their opponents, just like they did against Tennessee. Look, 6 different guys scored 7 touchdowns, factored into that blowout. So a lot of balance there, a lot of the defensive scores, the takeaways, the punt returns. Sam Laporta threw a touchdown. He caught one. I just happen to think the Lions are now the runaway favorites in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl. And if you're going to carry that flag, if you're going to carry that banner, whether Jordan Love plays or not, this is a game that you have to win.
Absolutely. By the way, according to Aaron Schatz, DVOA, Lions are number 1 with a big gap between them and the rest of the league, best team in the league in terms of the analytics. And I believe Aaron told me the top 5 in offense, defense, and special teams, which usually is a mark of a Super Bowl team. It is funny. The NFC North is a fantastic division. It seems like every week they're involved in some absolute game of the week, no holds barred. This game means something. They had a couple weeks ago, the Lions against the Vikings. Now we got another one against the Packers.
Yeah, it's the best division in football. It's the most compelling division in football, and it might be the most entertaining football across the league this year. And as always, if you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe to Mike Tanier's 2 Deep Zone on Substack. You can check me out on Substack at between the hash marks. And if you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review in the Apple Podcast Store. They really help grow the show. We have not 1, Mike, but 2 reviews to read this week that came in off of last week's podcast with Andre Williams.
Absolutely phenomenal. Can't wait to hear them. Let's go.
All right, so the one that I'm going to read off to you here, its headline is must listen for avid NFL fans from Saul 2367. He said, I've been a fan of Matt since his days at 97.5 The Fanatic in Philly. I've read his and Mike's written work at several sites across the years. I love the insight and the objectivity. Enjoy the pod.
Saul worries me. Thank you very much. Saul worries me around Halloween. What's his name? Is this Jigsaw?
Right.
Are we going to be stuck in some elaborate trap now? Am I going to have to saw off my own arm, even though I could probably saw through the plastic thing that he chained me to?
I'll say this. I'm just glad to be on Saw's team. I'm glad that he's a member of the tribe, that he's excited to enjoy the pod rather than, leaving us a 5-star review and then blasting us with that username. Then I might sleep with one eye open at night and leave the light on out front of the house. But he enjoys the pod. So I'm excited about that. What do you got over there?
Unironically, team. So, you want me to read this one? Hold on, let me go pull it up. Give me a second.
Yes.
Well-oiled machine here. Preview podcast to read. This comes from Sporty Girl 7722. I don't listen to podcasts normally, but when Matt said online he was starting a new football podcast with Mike, I knew I had to listen. These two have good discussions and bring some good guests weekly to add to the show. Totally suggest you check it out. So that is from Sporty Girl 7722. I think my first ever female listener. Just kidding.
First one to leave a review.
First one to leave a review. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, the guests are a big part of that. I mean, we're without a guest this week, but man, talking to Andre Williams, talking to
Quentin Lake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leroy
I said Darren Sharp. I'm like Darren Sharp or Darren. It was Leroy Butler. Sorry about that, Leroy. He didn't send me that vodka. That's why
I know. I wish that I had a case to put on display next to the pumpkins or something, a great promo. But thank you to Sporty Girl 7722 and to Saul 2367. We appreciate the 5-star reviews, the comments. They really do help grow the show. We really appreciate the continued support and subscribing on podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Substack, all those places. And we're off next week, but Mike, we'll be back to look ahead to week 11. And a lot can happen between now and then with the trade deadline and another wild weekend ahead in the NFL. What do you have your eyes on this weekend?
I am doing a mailbag, and as often it is ballooning into several mailbags, but we're talking Cowboys, we're talking Jets, we're talking Ravens defense, and we're trying to figure out what's going on there. And we're talking also a lot about things like how do you build an NFL roster? Because when you have a question about how you build an NFL roster, you don't go to Bill Belichick because he'll just tell you just run past the ball. You come to an expert like me with my 37 years of general manager experience. What do you got going on?
Yeah, we're going to have some bold predictions coming up ahead of the NFL trade deadline, trades that I think should go down, teams that I think should be buyers and sellers. That'll drop a little bit later this week. And then, of course, the mailbag on Friday, subscriber exclusive. If you subscribe to the Substack at Matt Lombardo NFL on Substack, ask your questions. I'll answer them. You can, ask them in the chat. You can ask them on Threads at Matt Lombardo NFL. And I'm sure that you're getting some questions as well on Threads at Mike Tanier, right?
Absolutely. Get some on Threads. That's the best place to find us talking about football. Not the bad place. We're in the okay place, which is Threads.
Yes. Again, we're off. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Mike, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the football. Talk to you then.
Talk to you soon.